everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I am Katie, joined by Chris and John. How's it going,
Hello.
fellas?
Hello.
Ooh, nice. We're getting good at that. Pre-show, we were just kind of chatting about bread recipes and other, interesting stuff that gets passed down through families. Speaking of families, your sales team
Dude,
is
that's
part
I
of
was
your
like,
family.
how is she going to weave this one? Where's this gonna be? This is gonna be good.
Not well is the answer. Not well. This week, we are talking about how to use generative AI to build a sales playbook. Now, I asked in our Analytics for Marketers Slack group, which is free to join, trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, if people had created a sales playbook. And if they had, was it just checking a box or were they actually using it? And majority of people are saying, like, one of the jokes was, oh, it's in the break room holding up a table, or, that kind of thing. So like the general consensus from a very small number of people is that it is not being used. And I'm wondering, and this is going to be a question for both of you, if like, is it because it's not good, it's too cumbersome, it's not helpful? And is there a better way to do it? Because sales is one of those things, like it's essential for any company. You kind of have to have sales in order for a company to run. So I guess, John, I want to start with you. You created our original sales playbook. And until I met you, I actually had never worked at a company that had a sales playbook, which, looking back on my career, is baffling. So you created this sales playbook. It's huge, it's in depth, it's detailed. So what was your thought behind, we need a sales playbook?
Yeah. It's great to talk about because there's a number of different levels. It evolves as your company grows and changes, right? When you're a startup, pretty much every deal you're making it up as you go and trying to figure out how things work. So there's no need for a sales playbook. But then the next stage, which is where most of our sales playbook is you start to have some repeatable stuff. There's some things you use over and over again. And really, I need it because my memory is so terrible that, 3 weeks from now, I'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I already did this. I already wrote something on that. And so you go to the sales book and there it is. You can copy it and paste it and redo it. And it's great because you've got your notes. It's like, okay, we tried X, Y, and Z, and these things didn't work. So next time you do it, do, ABC. And it stays really organic and messy at that early stage because you're just kind of listing out all the stuff you're doing and trying to find patterns and figure out what works and where to go. The next stage of it is once you get big enough where you've got more than one person selling, it becomes of huge value then, because now you can just say to the person, hey, go read this, or whenever you come up with a question, search this doc, and at least they've got some kind of guidance, as opposed to most startups where people are just like looking around, not knowing what to do, and start breaking things. So that's kind of where it's at. Now, it's been interesting to me because there's so much stuff in there, but our product and our services are just moving so fast that so much of it gets left in the dust. But at least, we've got some kind of documentation as to what we're doing and where we're going.
Well, it's interesting. A couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, I posted about how the same things always go wrong in a digital transformation, AI integration, whatever you want to call it. And one of the ways to prevent that is to document everything. And I got a comment saying, but things move so fast that, what's the point of documenting? And, we could do a whole episode on documentation, but to what you just said, John, there's, things are moving so fast that in order to know what worked, what didn't work, what we said, the big reason I use a sales playbook is what are we currently quoting certain services as? Like what's hitting, what's landing, what are people responding to, so that everybody has the same shared understanding of how much things cost. That to me is huge. And so, now, yes, things are moving quickly, but technology is moving in such a way that you also have the opportunity to keep the documentation in an automated way, however you want to do it, up to date as well. So there's really no excuse anymore to not have a living, breathing, up-to-date playbook or any kind of documentation for that matter. Which is now where I would turn over to Chris to say, so how the heck do we do that?
How the heck do we update our sales playbook? Well,
yeah,
to both your points, we've got a lot of the good basic ingredients, right? We've got lots of data. We've got some examples from existing sales playbooks. One of the hardest things about this process is, and this is going to be hard for any organization that has typical sales professionals, there's a lot of ego in sales. I know the right way to do this. I can sell this, right? And the process we're going to walk through today requires putting some of that to the side, at least temporarily, which is a tall order. The first thing we want to do is ask the question, what are we missing? Right? What don't we have in our sales playbooks? And this is where a tool like any of the deep research tools, Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, can put together a best practices for what belongs in sales playbooks. The framework I would recommend you use is the Trust Insights Casino framework, which is for deep research specifically. You can get your copy for free at trustinsights.ai/casino. No forms to fill out, no information to give. And this is exactly the format I used. I said, what belongs in a sales playbook? And it gave me a nice 38-page report about what belongs in a sales playbook. Things that are true, universally, for example, universally accepted things in sales playbooks. This is what every sales playbook should have. Company information, ICPs, buyer personas, value proposition, product and services, sales methodology, sales plays and tactics, objection handling, all this stuff. This section right here is the template for your future sales playbook. You want to have all of these pieces. If you don't have all of these pieces, that's a miss, and that's something that you can incorporate into the sales playbook. So in our sales previous versions, we had a lot of this. We didn't have as much on competitive, and we didn't have as much on sales enablement as we could have. No fault of anyone's, right? We're just, like John was saying, we're just trying to get things done. But now we've got this template. We also need data. And again, this is, I can't hammer this point at home enough. You have to have good data. And for this process, I pulled 3 sources of data. One, we use an AI transcription service that attends all of our meetings, and it records all of our calls and transcribes them. So one of the 3 major data sources for updating our system is using the last year's worth of Monday and Friday sales calls. So we do sales calls Mondays and Fridays, and just grabbing all those transcripts. Now, there are some little tips and tricks along the way for doing this. Your system probably outputs a big old pile of PDFs that looks like this. This is going to be very hard to put into AI. Most AI tools will have firm limits about how many files you can upload, and we have here 70 transcripts. On most systems that have a command line, you can run a script called PDF to text that will convert all of your sales call PDFs into individual text files. Still haven't solved the problem of lots of files, but we've now converted them into a much smaller format. And then from there, you can use any form of concatenation software to glue it all together into one big text file. And that's what we've done here is for those weekly calls, one big text file. And now it has all the data. This is about 400,000 words because we're a chatty bunch.
Well, I was going to say, so what you're saying is I don't have to open 70 files and individually copy and paste them all into one document?
Drag and drop.
You can, you shouldn't, but you can. I will disclose, I have a special piece of software that I wrote that prepares files for AI that tells you what each file's name is, the line length and stuff. But it basically just glues them all together. But if you have any competency with managing, file system management, that's something that you can do pretty straightforward. Second data source, and this is something we've talked about many times with sales, the CRM. You've got to get the stuff out of your CRM, and specifically, you want your all of your deals, closed and won and lost, open deals as well. And you want the notes fields, which is where all the information about the deal occurs. Most CRM software like HubSpot, Salesforce, or whatever can export this as a CSV file. And as we've talked about many times on the show in the past, you never, ever, ever give generative AI a CSV file. That is just asking for trouble. There's a free utility called CSV JSON, which is ineptly named, that will convert your CRM data from a CSV to a JSON file. JSON is JavaScript object notation. It's a scripting format that formats your data, not for humans, but for machines. Machines really like that format, and they can read it easily. And so it converts all the columns and the column headers and the rows into what is essentially a very long transcript. So that's our next ingredient, is to say, okay, here is our CRM data. So the third bucket that we use a ton, and it's going to vary based on your company, is Slack. So we use Slack. We have a sales channel in our Slack instance. And so I can go, as I'm an admin for our Slack instance, I can export our whole Slack instance, pull out the sales channel, and then take that, glue just the transcripts from the Slack sales channel into a big file, and now we're ready. And so now we have 3 different perspectives on our sales. Things we say to each other in Slack, things we say to each other in calls, and then the CRM data. What we want to do is, for each of these things, we want to go into a tool like, I would strongly suggest Google's Gemini for this, because these are very, very large data sets, and most tools like ChatGPT and stuff cannot handle this much data. You're talking hundreds of thousands of words, well past their system limits.
Is there, perhaps this is part of the CRM data, but is there a reason that you didn't export the input calls, the transcripts of input calls from the AI transcription data sets?
I didn't input those calls because I couldn't find them in a quick and efficient manner, because they're not labeled input call.
Okay. So that goes back to basics of just good governance of, if this is an exercise you want to go through, then things have to be named in a way that you can find it.
Yes.
Now, okay, that's helpful.
The CRM data, the notes field, has a lot of that information in it already.
And that was my other question, I guess it really depends on how your organization is set up. Because I know we've been making a concerted effort to, I think now it does it automatically. It adds the transcript to the notes field after a call, which is super helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah, one take on that, though, is I should be naming those initial appointments input calls specifically, and then you'll be able to scrape those out of Fireflies.
Exactly. That'd be super helpful. So this is our prompt that we used. I said, using the following, and I did this 3 times. Using the following CRM notes as the sole reference, infer and extrapolate a complete comprehensive verbose sales playbook using the sales playbook best practices and the included templates. I put the Google Gemini deep research doc in. I put one of those 3 documents in. I said, here's who trusted insights is. Don't use other named entities. And then from our best practices document, I said, these are the 12 things that you must construct from this particular data source. So we end up with, for example, this is the sales playbook from our CRM data, all 12 items based solely on what's in the CRM. I reran the prompt with a new prompt, new chat, same prompt, same sales best practices, different data source for Slack. I said for weekly calls. So here is a playbook based solely on our weekly calls. And then, of course, the third one is our Slack instance. Here's a playbook based solely on a Slack instance. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to distill down the hundreds of thousands of words into just thousands of words. So we have 3 different versions. This, by the way, is a really interesting thing to look at. And Katie, I know you're going to ask. These are in Google Drive for you to look at after the show.
Thank you.
But based on the data source, there's slightly different views of the same organization, a view from a call perspective, a view from a chat perspective, a view from a CRM perspective. And for sales leaders, those differences might be very interesting to see. Like, are opportunities in one place that aren't in others? Is there language being used in one place that isn't being used in others? And what could we do to unify that? So we now have these 3 sales playbooks built from our data, plus the 2 other ones from 2020 and 2024 that John had. So our next step in the process is to say, okay, we now need to do a merge. And the merge process says, okay, here's all the documents. And there is extensive system instructions for how to do a document merge. So the instructions are, tell me what you're doing, summarize each document, summarize the pieces, summarize all the table of contents, then start merging things together, identify conflicting information, reconcile the conflicts. If 2 out of 3 reports are majority say one fact and the minority has a different fact, prune the minority fact. If there's no clear majority, attempt to determine it based on the thing. Merge the duplicate information, and then ultimately boil it down into a single consolidated document. This set of system instructions plus our playbooks, and then I've specified, here's the template. You got to use this template because we want it to be apples to apples across everything so that the tool doesn't have to work so hard to figure out how to merge all this data together. It goes through and it goes through and it goes through, and boy, does this take some time. This is why we're not doing this live on the show, because just the first path of analysis took 5.5 minutes, and then the actual time to glue it all together was 13 minutes. So,
which in real life is not that long, given the amount of information and background data that you're working with. But on a live stream, that's like forever.
yeah,
But in
that's
real
a lot
life,
of
that
dead
is
air.
really efficient. Yeah. John and I only have so many sea shanties we can sing.
I mean, I can pause and let you sing.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we can just keep going.
Hey.
But it's what I appreciate. And this, I mean, again, this is true of really anything you're creating with generative AI, is the more data you give it, the better the output is going to be. So like you have the Trust Insights knowledge block, you have like the deep research we did for our competitive analysis. Like I know all of those things in the back of my mind because we've done them on different live streams. And if you want to see some of the stuff we've done, you can go to trustinsights.ai/YouTube and go to the So What playlist and find all those old episodes. But like we've done the work to get all of this background information. So we're not just saying, hey, generative AI, here's our URL. Here's what we want to do. Build us a sales playbook. Like we're giving it everything we do related to sales, everything it's asking for. When you brought up that initial deep research of like, here's all the elements that should be included in a sales playbook, I didn't sweat once because it like I know with confidence we have all that stuff today in 2025. So now it's just a matter of putting it all together in a more succinct way.
Yep. If anything, one of the things that I discovered in this process is how much we've forgotten about, right? So when I asked to do a master consolidated list of our services, I'm like, oh yeah, we do that. Like, I forgot we did that. That's not a thing that we talk about on a day-to-day basis, but like we still do that thing. So after AI Studio spits out the results, you glue it all together. And this is the Trust Insights Master Sales Playbook. All 153 pages of it.
To which my initial reaction was, oh, my Lanta. And if you know, you know.
But what's in it? Company information, organizational structure, key sales contacts, ideal customer profiles. And this is interesting. It didn't find one. It found 6 of them. 5 different ideal customer profiles, and then 7 buyer personas, synthetic individuals from those ideal customer profiles. Because remember, ICP is not a buyer persona.
I was just going to say, I so appreciate, and this was a conversation I had with Andy Crestadina a couple weeks ago on the Doodle webinar, because he was approaching it as ICP was the same as buyer persona. And we had a really good conversation about how they are very different. And that's a lot of the gap that we fill with our ICP is people think they have it, but they really, all they have is the buyer persona, not the potential customer.
Exactly. So we've got the data-driven enterprise, the growth-focused mid-market company, and so on and so forth. Our value proposition, our product and services. And this is where you're getting into all the stuff like, oh, I forgot we did that. So our strategic consulting services and all these different things. Our AI and data science projects, our analytics and reporting services, education and enablement, influencer and content services, and so on and so forth. So all of that is documented in there. And by the way, if any of these are appealing, you can just ask John or go to trustinsights.ai/contact. We can help you with that. Then our sales process and methodologies. So it went through and based on our conversations, our Slack chats, all the stuff, it figures out what our way of doing sales is. So if you're not clear, or maybe as some companies have, there's a bunch of people doing things kind of their own way, you can merge that together with a good deep merge prompt and come up with a consolidated, this is the way we do it.
This also, to me, is an amazing onboarding document, because one of the challenges that I've seen for us as a small company is we just haven't had the time to create good, well thought out onboarding documents. And so I've always been hesitant to be like, okay, we can bring someone new on because I don't have anything to give them. But now I'm like, oh, damn, this is exactly where they start, because everything they need to know is in this document.
Mm-hmm. We get the sales plays, the prospecting plays. These are all the different ways that John and the whole company have in some way tried to do outreach to build some pipeline, outbound, discovering solutioning plays, demonstration plays, closing plays, scripts, emails, targeted questions, templates. It put together all of these different pieces. In fact, I'll just scroll down just so we can take a quick peek at what some of this looks like. This is section 6.5. So in here you have targeted questions, need, budget, authority questions, additional questions, voicemail script here. Hey, this is John Wall from Trust Insights following up on your, we specialize in, and so on and so forth. So it has built all of these components for us from what we've had to say over time.
And that's the thing that I love the most, is that this is just us in a very organized way.
Exactly. Objection handling, how we have overcome objections for different types of sales calls and things, cost and budget, AI complexity, ROI, how do we answer objections on calls, competitive intelligence, who we compete against and what we do about them, the tools that we use for our sales process. So what's involved in our sales process? What are our KPIs and metrics? All of the enablement materials that we have to help make sales happen, content, company services, case studies, proposals, speaker kits, all that's been cataloged and put together. And then coaching frameworks. How do we grow our sales team capabilities based on the known best practices and based on everything we've said? How do we build stuff like this playbook? How do we build these tools? So this is the final output of the generative AI aggregation of us, essentially, and our sales for the last however many years.
John?
It's all there. This is the kind of thing I will spend the next couple of days just pouring through, trying to see where stuff's at and what kind of enlightenment we've got it. Because it's amazing to close the loop between the process document and the stuff that's actually in the CRM system and in the Fireflies calls that we're doing. That stuff is really kind of buried, and we're just having to kind of like feel as we go. But to have that actually, put into chunks and codified and give us some opportunity to really dig down on who those personas are and who the buyers are, that kind of stuff is really useful.
One thing that sticks out to me, so we're looking at this section 11, the sales enablement. My first thought is, oh, great. What I should do is go through this and add links to the appropriate final usable document. So make sure, so if it says, proposal and SOW templates, MSA, NDA. Like, let me go ahead and link to the final one so that we're all using the same ones. Let me go ahead and link to the speaker kits. Let me go ahead and link to the white papers and guides so that someone going through this has everything in one place. Like, this is such a useful thing to, again, build that consistency, make sure we're all doing it the same way so that the data that we're collecting is also being collected in a consistent way.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that needs to happen, and we were talking about this earlier, this needs to be QA'd. This needs to be checked to make sure that it did not pick up, because we talk a lot of crap in our sales call, our weekly calls. There's things you can find. There's little things can find their way in here that maybe don't belong in here. And so it does need, someone does need to go through this.
I'm surprised there's no swears in here.
I'm sure there are somewhere. But this is 50,000 words, 153 pages. This is a book. Like, this is a business book.
Yeah. No, and, I was reading through this before the live stream, and I flagged there was a framework that was mentioned that sounds similar to one that we have but isn't ours. And so there's those little nuanced things. So you need to make sure that someone who understands the companies, like someone like a John, is going to go through these things and be like, oh, that's not actually accurate, or, it picked up on this. It's not really true. Do not skip the human intervention QA part. Have your subject matter experts go through these documents. 153 pages. There's bound to be an error somewhere. I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot, because even just looking at it, I'm like, this is all our stuff. It all makes sense. It's all coherent. But there's going to be those little detail things that, God forbid we start to onboard, like a sales associate, and they're like, great, I want to sell XYZ framework. And they start talking about it. We're like, that's not a thing. We don't have that. Like, you don't want to find yourself in that position.
Exactly. So to recap so far, we've started with what we had, which was good. We built out best practices using the Casino framework to understand what we should have. We went and got all of our data. We assembled multiple versions because of space limitations of the different data sets. We glued them all together and merged them down using a language model, and we end up with this. Now, here's the problem. It's 50,000 words. It's 153 pages. It's a full-size business book. This is a lot for someone to digest. I mean, how long would it take you to pick up a sales book off of the shelf and just read through it? It's a decent amount of reading. So what happens downstream from this is as important as this. This document absolutely should be as robust as you can make it. And there will be people saying, no, sales playbook should be thin and light because you want people to actually read it. Like, no, you want the book of how you do it. But we can use generative AI tools to make it more manageable. The obvious one here is to stuff it in Notebook LM, right? Which is Google's free tool. And you could say, I'm going to generate a mind map, or I'm going to make a study guide, or frequently asked questions, or briefing document, or frequently asked questions, or whatever. And if you want to get clever, you can do things like prompt it maybe in different thin slices to create sales training. So this, I'm going to play just a short 1-minute segment of a prompt I gave it specifically to generate training around objection handling.
Agency.
Gotcha. So it's not always just no money. It could be a value perception issue or a comparison issue. How does the playbook guide us to respond effectively then?
Okay. The first recommended approach is crucial. Acknowledge and explore value and ROI. This is the most frequent reason we see for closed lost deals.
Right. The price objection feels almost universal sometimes.
It does. You hear the classics, right? This is more expensive than we budgeted for, or just flat out, your price is too high, or we just don't have the budget for this right now.
Yeah. So why is this such a common roadblock? What does the playbook and the data suggest is behind it?
Well, sections 7.2.1 and 8.3 point to a few potential reasons. Sometimes, yes, they might genuinely have limited funds available right now. But often, prospects might be underestimating what it truly costs to solve the complex problem they've described. Or maybe they're comparing our very specialized services to something much more generic, like off-the-shelf software or a different type of agency.
Gotcha. So it's not always just no money. It could be a value perception issue or a comparison issue. How does the playbook guide us to respond effectively then?
Okay, the first recommended approach is crucial. Acknowledge and explore value and ROI. This is the most frequent reason we see for closed lost deals.
Right. The price of
So what it's done is it has created, in this case, a 30-minute training, an audio training from our playbook just on objection handling. So if I'm a sales leader at an organization that's, more than just the four of us, I might say, you know what, I'm going to take our sales playbook and section by section, piece by piece. I'm going to generate 15, 20-minute, internal podcasts to help our sales team skill up. But it's based on the way we do it. And so it's our stuff. It's not some generic, hey, a motivational sales trainer. This is straight out of our stuff. And so this, having this interface allows you, obviously, a sales professional just query it, say, well, how do I handle this? Here's this situation. It can pull citations from the playbook, from the master document. But you can also proactively create training from it that would let a new person, Katie, to your point about onboarding, skill up and say, okay, I'm going to listen to this on my commute. Here's the 20-episode Trust Insight Sales Mastery course.
So that actually brings up a couple of the things that I was thinking about. One, we can talk about offline. But the other question is, could we take this sales playbook and turn it into a custom model, like a GPT, like the Trust Insights Sales GPT? So, for example, if I have if I have a lead that's close lost and they're like, you know what, we just couldn't make the budget work, could I take all the information I have about that lead, give it to the GPT and say, how do I respond to this that doesn't feel pushy, that keeps the door open for more opportunity, but I feel like I have to say something and sort of try one more time to get them to bite?
You absolutely can do that. You should do that. And the place
I would
that
like to do that.
the place I would suggest doing that would be in Gemini. So going to your Explore Gems, create a new gem and call this Sales Coach. And in the knowledge section here, add from Google Drive. And there is my 2025 master sales document. So now this huge sales playbook becomes part of this and say, help my salesperson do better sales. This is a terrible prompt.
Sure.
You could absolutely do that. And then you'd say, okay, start a chat and say, I am pitching Acme widgets. They say they don't have budget. What should I do? And based on the stuff that we've put into our sales playbook, it's say, hey, here's the class thing. And there it is, straight out of the playbook. Validate the concerns, explore, shift to value and ROI, reinforce our unique value. And this is with a crap prompt, right? So this good playbook, crap prompt. This is how you would do this.
And so where Notebook LM is more like a wiki to give you the information that's in there, this sales coach, you could say, help me draft a response based on their objection.
They want our services for $500. We start the services they asked for at $50,000. Help me draft an email using these best practices to resolve this impasse. And obviously, if you wanted to, you in your supplementary documentation, you might have things like your brand style guide, tone of voice, certain things like that you might want to incorporate. But this is just a very simple example. It's like, yeah, help me figure this out. I don't know what to do here. But this 50,000 word document is going to help any sales professional figure out, okay, well, what do I do? Hi, Acme Widgets. Thanks so much for your interest. We appreciate you sharing your budget of $500. Now, normally we'll all say in our heads, go take a long walk off a short pier. The specific services you inquired about, and so on and so forth, generally start at $50,000, reflecting the comprehensive nature and substantial value delivered, and so on and so forth. Sometimes a very specific, tightly scoped question can be addressed in a more limited engagement. We do offer 1-hour expert consultation, our academy courses, our free newsletter resources, right? So these are ways that you could respond.
I like that it's offering up solutions. So you're not just like, all right, peace out, which is it takes the emotion out of it, which I think, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, sales can be really emotional.
Yes, there's plenty of GFY responses that would
always be closing.
Yes.
But like in reality, but that's like, it's, to Chris, where you started, there's a lot of ego involved, but there has to be, like, there needs to be a confidence, there needs to be an assurance that, like, we know what we're talking about, but that also comes with being able to handle rejection and, heartbreak and frustration and anger, a lot of really strong emotions. And I know for me, I'm a very emotional person. I usually wait 24 hours before I respond to something so that I've taken a lot of the emotion out of it. I can do it more clear-headed. But having a sales coach, for example, to be like, this is what I like. It's a very early use case that we talked about with generative AI of like, have generative AI take your emotional response and clean it up. And so that it sounds more professional. Cause I know, Chris, it's an example you give in your talks of like, hey, Bob, I gave you the effing receipts and blah, blah, blah. And it gives you like the more, Bob, due to the nature of the delays of the invoicing, blah, blah, blah. I like that you can take a very specific use case, which is sales objections, which is something nobody wants, and have it use your words, your work to create a very professional sounding response that includes solutions.
Exactly. And there's so many templates and examples from our own stuff, from the CRM, from our Slack messages and things, because we say in our Slack channel, hey, Katie, can you read this response? And that's in here now. And so when it's referencing the master sales playbook, all 50,000 words of it, there's a lot of that in there. So it has examples to draw from. It doesn't have to wing it.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing you can do with this is you can use this, you can guide this for creating new sales enablement materials. So, for example, I went to Gemini and I said, I don't know what we sell anymore because we have so much stuff. I said, make me a menu. And it said, hey, here's the Trust Insights menu of services, data-driven insights, and AI-powered solutions served fresh. Your palate sparking appetizers, online courses, speaking stuff. Building the perfect mise en place, data governance, AI strategy. You can see universal analytics, that needs to go away because that's obviously no longer relevant. GA4, email list hygiene, our signature insights and strategies, ICPs, competitive analysis, digital customer journeys, the AI chef's table of all the advanced AI techniques, and then, of course, masterclasses and continued empowerment. When we say, like, what do we do as a company?
Well,
I can't remember what we do.
The question, that we got early on as we were struggling to articulate was, people would say, I don't know how to buy from you. Or our partners would say, I don't know how to sell you. And I feel like this after, gosh, we've been in business, what, 7
years?
7.5, call it 7 and some change. Now we're very clear about what it is that we have to offer. And I would look at this and say, we can probably scale this back a little bit to make it more focused. But like, this is very clear to me now. If you still don't know how to partner with us, then I don't know what else to say. Because I feel like now with 7.5 years of data, we're very clear about what we have.
Exactly. And this is then something that you can, with tools like Gemini, you can say, turn this into the outline for a slide deck. If you're doing like a capabilities deck, turn this into, an infographic, turn this into whatever you want to.
I can hear all the way across the world, Kelsey cursing me out for making her do our capabilities deck before this was a thing that we had built.
Right.
She's probably like, oh, I went through all of those versions and now it's right here.
Exactly. Also, with something like this, when we think about it, like, it's just remembering what are all the things we can do, because we forget sometimes. We have voice of the customer analysis on here. We do that. That's something we're actually extremely good at. We don't often say like, hey, buy this thing from us.
Yeah. And I think Kelsey is cursing me out. Sorry, Kels. Listen, I didn't know this was a thing either. I would have, we'll talk. But I mean, this to me, it's like, okay, do we need a capabilities deck? Like, here we go. Yes, we do need a capes deck. Sorry, Kelsey. We do need one. But this becomes the foundation for it. And then to your point, Chris, you can say, okay, great. This is everything. Help, like now, generative AI outline what a capabilities deck would be, what in elements would be included. Because this, man, we really got to get a website updated.
I was just going to say, and this is also now our services page.
Dang it. Yeah. It's, well, again, it's, we've been so close to it for so long that I feel, we can take a step back and be like, wow, we really overcomplicated our website by trying to really articulate what it is that we do, when really they just want this. Like, this is pretty descriptive. We don't need the deep pages that go on and on about what it is. Like, this tells us what it is.
Mm-hmm. I would even see, if we go to the point of doing things like sponsoring conferences or events, this printed out as an actual restaurant style menu, as like one of the things on the table that people can just walk away with, like, oh, here's the menu. Everybody understands the menu. Like, you've all eaten at a restaurant. Like, oh, okay, I can see what I want to order here.
Yeah. Kelsey's still mad at me. She's still commenting.
Kelsey's still running.
She's still mad.
It closes the gap because so much of what we do talks about what and how. It's very specialized and unique technology and new approaches. But really, this covers the why. This is, customers look at this and it's just the one paragraph of like what's in it for them. And it, and that's just bang on for the website too.
Yeah.
And so if we go back to our 2025 sales playbook and we look in section 11 on sales enablement materials, there may be things, one of the questions you can ask is, what sales enablement materials aren't here that should be? And we can say, okay, now we know we have all the data. Let's make them. Have the machines make them for us. So that's the process of building from all of the data you have, plus using deep research tools, plus using merging prompts, plus basic use of large language models that have big memories, into something that's actionable and useful. This is your master sales playbook for the organization. And then from there, you spin off all the products, call scripts, email scripts, nurture sequences in your marketing automation software. If you're doing a nurture campaign, social media content. Hey, every 8th post should be a promotional post. How do we do that? Sales playbook. Give me a promotional post for this service, right? Content calendar, landing pages, services pages, videos, audios, podcasts, training. There's so much you can take from that master document if you've done a good job of building it to begin with.
Could you, similar to what we've done again in past episodes of the live stream, could you use the sales playbook to create a scoring rubric against past, or basically, could you use this to analyze past campaigns that didn't work and have it point out, like, here's where you could have made improvements? Like, if we've sent out like email pitches and something like that, you could have it scored against the updated sales playbook to be like, yeah, here's the 5 things you missed.
You could do it that way. You could also take all the prep documents themselves, put them into Notebook LM, because you're going to have a lot more very granular detail. Like, oh, back in 2023, we tried this and it went sideways. And so having the source documents in a separate Notebook LM instance might be a good way to do that, so that you can say, okay, here's what the sales playbook says of the consolidated known good stuff, but here's the raw data in a separate notebook to say, like, have we tried this before? And the answer might be, oh yeah, you tried this in 2021 and it went sideways.
Well, there's that. There's what have you tried? But then there's the actually telling you why based on your sales playbook. So I'm thinking more of like the scoring rubric to be like, if I draft a cold pitch email for like our courses, for example, and it's well documented, I'm a terrible marketer because I'm way too blunt and direct. I could, put together an email, and could I then give it to the sales playbook scoring rubric and be like, is this going to work? Are they going to object? What am I going to miss? Like, does this actually talk about any of the services we actually offer, or am I just making things up? Like, could you use it that way?
You absolutely could. I would take it a step further and say, of the 7 buyer personas we have, which buyer persona is this a best fit for? And then say, how will this resonate with this buyer persona? What would this buyer persona prefer to see instead? Rewrite this for me for buyer persona 5.
John, write that down.
I'm ready. We're tagging the personas. We're getting them straight.
I mean, I'm excited. This is really cool. And like, ready. I'm ready to start doing the thing.
Ready to go.
Katie's got new toys.
I do. Like, this is the kind of toy that I'm like, oh, this was a good surprise.
Exactly. So I would encourage people to do this, walk through this process. We walk through the steps, each of the pieces. If you've got questions, you're trying it out for yourself, things, pop on by the Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. So all the supporting materials and things you have somewhere in your organization. I will tell you, the hardest part of this is probably going to be getting all of the data together in one place. And if you don't have the data for some reason, but you do have a decently sized sales organization, one of the easiest things to do is start doing interviews with customers. Like, why did you buy? Ideally, if you can get in touch with a few friendly non-buyers, like, why didn't you buy? And then interview every member of your sales and marketing team individually and say, what do you think we sell? And then consolidate all of those transcripts. And it's a way to mitigate if your CRM is just a hot mess, for example, and you don't have Slack and you don't have call transcripts and things.
Well, and I can definitely see if there's a lot more data that you could include in your sales playbook should it exist, like feedback surveys and testimonials and, all that good stuff, But again, it's just a matter of finding it, getting it. And I think that, to your point, Chris, that's the hardest part. But once you do, like, this is such a powerful tool.
Exactly. All right. Any final parting words, John?
I love looking at the whole map of the city and the skyline, but yeah, this afternoon I have to go down and get involved in that specific street fight. So hopefully we'll get a chance to dig into this stuff more. But yeah, I'm same as Katie, very excited with the opportunities that are around this.
All right. Well, folks, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you on the next one.
Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.